Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Shalom. I'm David Mנצר, Israeli government spokesman for the National Public Diplomacy Directorate in the office of the Prime Minister. This is a special Sunday briefing today, the 19th of January, day 471 since the start of the October 7th war. Today I'll be providing you with an update of the latest on the hostage release agreement, and then we have time for some questions. The Prime Minister spoke extensively last night, which I encourage you to draw on. So today I'll speak about the agreement for the release of the hostages and a ceasefire in Gaza. We are in the first phase where 33 of our hostages, most of them alive, held by Hamas terrorists for 471 days, will be returned to Israel. 3 female hostages are expected to return to Israel today. Israel will confirm this to be true when they are back in Israel and their identities can be confirmed. Last night, the Prime Minister held a security assessment. The list of the hostages was not received at the agreed time. As such, the ceasefire, which was to take effect at 8:30 a.m. this morning, did not take place until 11:15 a.m. once the Hamas terror organization passed on the names to the mediators. We request all media not to circulate the details of the list and to act with due caution to safeguard the privacy of the families. We will update you with reliable information as soon as relevant. I can also confirm that Israel's armed forces have rescued from Gaza the body of fallen IDF soldier, Staff Sergeant Oron Shaul. Hamas held his body since 2014. His family have, of course, been notified. The number of Israeli hostages in Gaza now stands at 97. As to next steps, in addition to the majority in the government, a majority in Israel, together with all of the branches of Israel's security forces, the IDF, the ISA and Mossad, all of which have supported this agreement, the Prime Minister last night made clear that President Trump welcomed the agreement and rightly emphasized that this is the first stage of the agreement and this is a temporary ceasefire. That is what President Trump said, a temporary ceasefire. Ahead of the next stages of the agreement, Israel retains significant assets in order to return all of our hostages and in order to meet the objectives of this war. Both President Trump and President Biden have given full backing to Israel's right to return to the fighting if Israel reaches the conclusion that the second stage of negotiations are ineffectual. Israel's government does, of course, want all stages to come into effect. But Israel greatly appreciates this. The Prime Minister also said he greatly appreciates President Trump's decision to lift the remaining restrictions on providing vital weapons and munitions to the State of Israel. There should be no doubt, however, if there is indeed a need, Israel will return to fighting with great force. We will not give up until all the goals of this war are met. The return of all of our hostages, the removing of the Hamas terrorist regime in Gaza, and eliminating the threat to our citizens. So in conclusion, before coming to your questions, let me paint a picture of the mood here in Israel. We are a nation collectively holding its breath. At the thought of 3 of our precious daughters of Israel coming home, we are a nation consumed by the plight of our hostages. We find ourselves all at once elated while at the same time dreading outcomes. Why? Because we've heard from the mouths of those who have already returned accounts of rape, of torture, of dungeons. For Israelis, this is an emotional roller coaster. It is simultaneously relief, it is joy, it is dread, it is apprehension, it is trepidation, and the knowledge that after 471 days, how can they be? held by monsters. This is the collective emotion here in Israel today. We fear for those who will not come home alive, that some are wounded, and of course the families that did not live to see their loved ones come home. It is a moment of tears, it's a moment of love, but most of all, it is a moment of humanity. And we are waiting. That's the end of our briefing today. I will now take your questions. Please put your questions in the chat together with your news outlet, and we'll take a couple. Okay, first question here from Reuters. Alexander Cornwell from Reuters. Reuters has reported that the ICRC team in Gaza is on the way to collect Israeli hostages from Hamas. Can you confirm whether the Israeli government is aware of this? And when does the Israeli government expect the 3 hostages being released today to reach Israel? Thank you, Alexander, for that question. I too have seen those reports, but we here from Israel officially have nothing to add at this time. We have nothing new to share with you at this time. As ever with these releases, Israel will confirm the release of our hostages and their identity when they arrive in Israel. That was the case in November 2023, and that will be the case this time. Just remember, we are dealing with a genocidal terrorist organization, and so we will know our hostages are home when they arrive in Israel. Okay, next question, please. Next question here is from Samuel Tissé-Bernet from the News Network. This week, the ceasefire in Lebanon is supposed to end. Can you please speak more about the government's plans the day after? Thank you for that question, Samuel. When it comes to the ceasefire in Israel's north, Israel wants that ceasefire to endure. And there have been some positive movements of the Lebanese army taking the place of Hezbollah between the Litani River and our northern border. But the agreement makes absolutely crystal clear there should be no armed forces, only the Lebanese army and UNIFIL forces in that space. Anything other than that is a breach of the ceasefire agreement, and therefore we are asking again that while there have been some positive developments, we are asking for there to be no Hezbollah armed forces in that space. That is clearly outlined in the agreement. That remains true right now. The reason this agreement is different to previous agreements is that Israel is enforcing this agreement. Okay, could you just scroll down? Okay, scroll up again, please. Okay, question from Joel Pollack at Breitbart News. Does Israel believe Hamas is deliberately stringing the Israeli public along by delaying the names and then the release of the hostages? That's your first question, Joel. Joel, this is a genocidal terrorist organization. Hamas, it's considered a terrorist organization around the world. The way they have acted since and before October the 7th, 2023, has been as a jihadist terrorist organization, and they have continued to this very moment, to the delays which they've implemented, to the various shenanigans which they've tried to pull off, trying to engineer last-minute crisis to get a last-minute better deal for themselves. We know precisely who we are dealing with. Second question from Joel Pollack at Breitbart is, President-elect Trump said that there will be all hell to pay if the hostages were not released, and yet many of the hostages will remain in captivity even if the deal is fulfilled. Is that a significant concession? And thirdly, you say, how does Israel respond to Hamas's attempt to claim victory? I thank you for that question, Joel. In my briefing earlier, I made clear that both President Trump and President Biden both understand that if this agreement is not respected, if it does not bear the fruit which it is supposed to bear, the release of all of our hostages, Israel retains the right to continue our war aims, and that are the return of all of our hostages making sure that Hamas is no longer in power, both its governing capability and its military capability anywhere in Gaza. We retain those war aims, and both the previous outgoing and the incoming administration both appreciate that fact. And when it comes to, how does Israel respond to Hamas's attempt to claim victory? Look, Hamas is not just Israel's enemy, it's the enemy of the Gazan people. They've used ordinary Gazans as human shields. They deliberately maximize civilian casualties to fuel their own propaganda. They steal humanitarian aid. They sell it back to hungry Gazan families at extortionate prices. They starve. They exploit their own people. Their evil knows no bounds. So I would simply ask you to look at all the previous wars Israel has fought. The enemies always claim victory, yet Israel has always been victorious. So I'll encourage you to do the maths there. Hamas has been decimated, their armory has been eviscerated, their leadership has been wiped out, they are no longer the force they were on October the 7th, and Israel has dealt them heavy blows. And I will remind you, Joel, that Israel retains its war aims. And a final question here from George Dastis from FA in Spain. Do you have an estimate of when the first Palestinian prisoners will start to be released? Thank you for that question, George. I've seen the Israeli Prisons Authority just put out a statement to that effect, and you'll be able to get more information from them. Okay. Another question here from Annabelle Timsit from the Washington Post. What's the Prime Minister's Office response? Okay, I've answered that question already. Okay, I think I've answered all the questions now in one way or another. There's a sort of lots of people repeating the same questions again. So, in the meantime, my friends, thank you for joining us today. This is an important moment, and we'll certainly keep you updated from the Prime Minister's office and here at the National Public Diplomacy Directorate as and when things develop, and there are developments. I would encourage you to use official sources of information. There's lots of speculation in the media. I would encourage you to respect the feelings of families of hostages as they are reunited with their families, and as hostages, please God, when they are released, receive the medical attention which they deserve. So thank you for joining us. Please do stay safe, and we'll have another briefing very soon, I expect. Thank you. Bye-bye.